All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lone Star Gridiron Class 2A preview show. Um, yeah, I'm Chris Daly, of course. I'm joined by Coach Travis McClain. How are you doing today, Travis?
Doing good, doing good. Enjoying the cooler weather, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's funny when it drops down to in the 90s, we're all excited about the cool weather.
Exactly, exactly.
I love it. I love it. So, how'd your week go?
Not bad. Finally got that first win monkey off of the back.
Yeah.
A little relieved a little bit of stress, but as is the way of the machine. You get about 24 hours and then it's on to the next one and get back to work. So,
Right on.
but it was an enjoyable one. We tried to soak it up for those 24. That's for sure.
Love it. Well, let's jump right in. They're here for the Class 2A rankings. We're going to start with Class 2A D2, and I'm going to start with the bottom. The first one, the brand new to the 2A D2 is Sunray. They came in at number 15, and they did that. They're 2-1, but their last win against Dimmitt, 80-0. That's what got them up in there.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a double-edged sword, right? Because I mean, obviously you're proving the productivity and explosiveness on offense. But I know there's a lot of situations where games could reach that score and they don't because coaches are trying to take care of each other or get a lot of guys in. But at the 2A level, something that I quickly learned is that you know when you get into those second halves and you're trying to take care of things, trying to speed a game up, well, the roster is what the roster is, and a lot of those twos on one side are probably starters on the other side, and if there's certain situations where you look around, you don't necessarily have a second left guard, you just have a backup guard, and he's got to play right or left, or you've got a seventh offensive lineman, right? So, um, but it was good to see them, show that explosivity.
Well, one of the things that Jason Herring from Refurio pointed out a few years back when he was on ESPN for running up the score, right? He was in trouble for all these points he put up. Always, until recently, was in a pretty weak district. And the problem was the knock on them was they would blow through district. They go 2 rounds deep and they get beat because their kids were not used to playing 4 quarters. So he said, look, I've got to play them 4 quarters. And because of that, they ran up the score.
And we kind of, when I was at Salina, we it's a fine line you walk because you want to do those certain things, and you've got to look at, especially, it was kind of a sliding scale, right? Like
Mhm.
you're counting reps and you're counting plays and you're looking to get into deeper into games, the deeper into the season you get. If a game gets out of hand in week 1 or 2 and you have the ability to start rotating in a lot of guys, then you probably do. But when you're looking at 8, 9, 10, and week 11, now you're weighing the cost of my guys have got to stay in shape. We've got to be conditioned. But I want to do the right thing because it's about the kids. There's no point in trying to break a kid's spirit by doing something running up the score wise. So it becomes a fine line that coaches have to walk.
Yeah, definitely. And the relationship between coaches is important there because these guys are brothers that, yes, they will fight on game night, but they're helping each other during the week. So you don't want to run up the score on your buddy.
Absolutely. You got to foster those relationships because, we're trying to teach, yes, we're trying to win, but we're also trying to teach young boys how to become good young men. And, maintaining those relationships and the professionalism that comes with the sport continues that example that we're trying to set for these kids.
Right on, right on. So let's look at the rest of 2AD2. Not a lot of changes. I mean, the top 10 stayed identical. Nobody changed. And that's just a testament to by the time you get to week 3, a lot of these teams are locked in. I think from here on out, you'll see moves that go up and down one slot. You won't see like last week when Granger popped up like, 5 spots or something like that. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that unless there's a huge.
Absolutely. And I think that, like you said, this is something we discussed week 1 where, the preseason rankings, the week one rankings, where there's certain teams that they are who they are, and we know who they
Hmm.
are. But once you get into week 3, 4, 5, we've got an idea of who those bell cows are, who the front runners are, and while we might see some movement between one or two, it's going to take a pretty strong run or substantial statement from a team to crack into a group like this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, or some barring injury or something like that. But at the top of 2AD2, you still have, like I said, our same top 10. You've got Martin number one, Albany just a fraction of collective points behind them. New Home number three, Collinsville number four, Chilton and Wellington right behind there. Lovelady, Wink, Bremond, and Granger are actually tied for ninth. So that rounds out the top 10. What stands out for you there?
I think the thing for me that I'm looking to watch is to see, like you were talking about, the fraction between Martin and Albany,
Yeah,
and see how, if we have a back and forth there. We've said more than once, Mart is Mart, right? That
yeah,
but Albany's in a position where they're nipping at their heels, and they could be, you know, they could make a couple week run, a couple of statements to potentially jump them. Now, at the end of the day, what does that mean, right? It's good for
yeah,
us to talk about, and fans to talk about, and a new number one, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's a measuring stick for Albany to say, can we put together a string of performances that make people say these guys can go toe to toe with Mart? Because
mhm,
you never want to downsell anybody that's, especially in the top 5, top 10. But there's certain programs that have established themselves. Reputation and consistency can definitely play into this, and Mart is one of those programs. And so
yeah,
if Albany can, if they can put together a few weeks where they have some truly statement victories and they can jump that, well, it's only going to build the confidence of those kids, and then it's going to challenge those coaches to, okay, this doesn't mean anything. We've got to continue to prove that we deserve to be in this battle for the number one spot. We deserve to be in this conversation.
yeah, definitely. And like you said, it really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, all these teams here in the top are going to the playoffs, so they're going to decide it on the field. And yes, it could be some locker room material, bulletin board material, like, hey, they have this team ranked ahead of us, fire some people up, or it could be the exact opposite, where somebody's ranked higher than they thought they should be, and now believe in themselves a little bit more.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's jump over to 2AD1. What are your thoughts here?
A couple, looking at the top, that top part right there. Toller falling a spot that, to me, I think falling one after a loss is understandable, but
Mhm.
I think the reason you don't see them drop much more is because, when you're playing a private school as a small school, it's always tough to judge.
Yeah.
I think that private schools present a unique opportunity. Yes, you get games that are ultra competitive, and I don't mean this to downtrodden private schools by any means. Um, it's just a slightly different situation. Public school coaches, you got to coach kids to walk in the door. And private schools, there's a little bit more of a turnover and fresh face look from year to year than you would normally see. So for a 2A to lose to a private school, I think falling one is right where they should be.
Yeah.
Um, the two that I think that we definitely need to keep an eye on are Sonora and Stratford.
Yeah.
They just keep taking care of business, right? These kids can't control who's on the schedule. They keep handling their business on the field and winning in relatively convincing margins.
Yeah.
And they're kind of poised to potentially make a jump 2, 3 more spots, depending on how some other things shake out, with some district matchups and other games like that.
Yeah. And Sonora, they're the biggest mover in the chart. The only one who moved up or down more than one. They've went up 3 spots, and that's like you said. It's because they're sitting at 3-0. All three of them have been pretty convincing victories. So, yeah, if they can keep that up, you're right. They could crack top 5.
Absolutely. And you never want to think of it this way, but they're sitting there right behind Cooper and Honeygrove, who are staring down the barrel of each other for a district
Yeah.
matchup. So one of them's going to leave that matchup with a loss, and that presents an opportunity for Sonora to make that jump. And that was something else that I'd put down as, Honey Grove is they're winning games by large margins. I was interested to see how the game, I guess 2 weeks ago now with TLC Cedar Hill would have played out, but it got called in the middle of the game with some stadium issues. And their other two games are 2-0. They're winning by large margins. They haven't given up a point on defense, but I want to see them play somebody that the polls that the coaches see as a more formidable opponent. You look at Cooper sitting at 2-1 with the loss to Hooks, but Hooks is a dang good football team.
Looks
So
great. Yes.
so you're not gonna disparage Cooper for having a loss like that. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I want to see is Honey Grove doing this. They play Sims Bowie this week's big physical team, so this should be a good measuring stick for them.
Yeah, definitely. And the other team I want to mention is Refugio. A lot of people thought that, the fact that they beat 3AD1 number 3 Edna in double overtime, that they should have caught up or at least tied Timpson. But I was at that game. I have never seen a game, and like I've mentioned many times, Jason Herring's a good friend. I think he's one of the best coaches out there. But both of those teams, Edna and Refugio, I have never seen teams that look like they're trying to lose a game as much as those two. It wasn't a fact of which team stepped up and won. It was which team stopped making mistakes enough to get away with the win. It was insane. Yeah.
Right. And then you pair that with, Timpson, Terry Bussey's still limited. They're taking care of business with him playing. He didn't play the first 2 weeks, and I don't think that the plan was for him to play. They suited him up. I don't think the plan was for him to have to play this past Friday. But they work him into the game. They might be trying to just slow play this, and then the starting quarterback that's been playing goes down. Terry steps in, and when you're winning games, when you make a statement victory week one against Beckville like they did, and your best player, arguably the best player in the state, isn't on the field, you're setting yourself up to be a tough team to jump in a poll of any kind just because of what he's capable of. And so I think that, whether it's Refugio, Centerville, any of these teams that are going to try and vie for that number one spot, they've got to go and convincingly take care of business, but they're going to need some help. They would need Timpson to either lose or play sloppily enough in a couple of weeks where we start to question the consistency of the team. And up to this point, they haven't done anything but go out there and execute. And, their strength of schedule right now says, these wins carry a little bit more weight.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you that because I haven't seen any of last week's game with Timpson, so I haven't seen how he's been playing. Did you see any of the video, and does he look like he's up to snuff?
I would say I saw a little bit. I would say that the biggest thing that's coming down right now, I think that a kid like Bussey is players play, right? When he's in game mode, he's going to play. I think the biggest thing right now is the conditioning and coaches. Those coaches are trying to be smart, put him in good situations to continue to build his confidence. I wouldn't say that there's a hesitancy in any of his movements by any means, but I wouldn't be surprised if you talk to one of those guys off the record and there's a pitch count or a snap count, a touch count of a relatively low number because they know what he's capable of, and they're much more concerned about what he's going to do in November and December for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think the next few weeks, at least for Refugio, I don't see that. I mean, they've got Three Rivers in 3 weeks. I think that's the only real challenge. Maybe Ganado might give them a little bit towards the end of the season because we have Ganado pretty high, but even Shiner is not the Shiner that they have been for the past couple of years. So I think it's skate time for Refugio for a while. And again, if they're playing 4 quarters, they're still very young. Lots of sophomores on the team. So if they're playing 4 quarters, then they'll be ready come playoffs. But I think they're going to skate for a while. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know Timpson and Toller's schedule off the top of my head, but I think that as you start to get into these last couple weeks of districts, you know, coaches are usually pretty smart. You either front load your non-district or you back load it, right? You either
Right.
use those first 2 weeks to build confidence, or you use them as the measuring stick in those back few weeks to build confidence. So it's going to take some marquee district matchups for us to really get good measuring sticks, which I think is, within this top 10, the biggest one you're looking at is the Cooper Honeygrove matchup.
Yeah.
Just because but what they were able to do last year and what they're doing so far these first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, and the only tough one that I know of for Timpson is towards the end of the season. They have to face off against Garrison, and Garrison we have number 10 right now. So that could be a chance for Garrison to step up and say, "Hey, we're better than you guys think we are," or for Timpson to prove, "Hey, we're playoff ready."
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else you got?
No, shameless plug. It is homecoming week
Yeah,
out at the swamp for the Rivercrest Rebels. So uh, we've got our second home game of the year coming up, and um, if anybody out in the Red River Valley and the 27 Highway 271 area is looking for something to do on Friday night, come out to the swamp and catch a good game.
I love it. I love it. Definitely. And be sure to check out our regional shows, whatever part of the region or the state you're in. They can all be found on LoneStarGridiron.com, as well as a whole bunch of coaches' shows each week.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, once again, Travis, thank you, and thank you to everybody for tuning in, because that's the most precious gift you can give is your time and your attention, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week.
All right.